In this video, I'm going to go over the most commonly missed questions on the DNA RNA practice multiple choice test. If there's a question that you got wrong, you're not sure why you got it wrong, why the right answer is the right answer, and I don't go over that question in this video, make sure to email your teacher or come in the morning to get some help with that on Friday. Before I go over any of the questions, this is a really important flowchart to understand. It's really how life works. DNA to RNA to protein or DNA to DNA. This is going to help us answer so many of these questions. DNA turning back into DNA is called replication. DNA turning into RNA is called transcription. And RNA being turned into a protein is called translation. Students get transcription and translation mixed up all the time. Think of it this way. Transcription comes alphabetically before translation. DNA has to write down the message before it can get translated into another language that the cells understand. So DNA to RNA is transcription, the writing of the message. RNA to protein is translation, turning it into the chemical message that the cells understand, which is the protein. Knowing where these processes happen is also important. Anything involving the DNA for an animal and plant cell is going to happen in the nucleus. So when replication makes an exact copy of DNA, this must happen in the nucleus. DNA to RNA, since it's involving DNA, must happen in the nucleus. RNA to protein, this is where it happens in the ribosome, or at the ribosome. Doesn't have to happen in the nucleus, it doesn't involve DNA. This flowchart is going to help us answer so many of these questions. So for number 6, it asks what is produced during transcription. So I brought back this flowchart. DNA to DNA is replication. So it's not a DNA molecule. DNA to RNA is transcription. So an RNA molecule is made. Translation makes proteins, so that's not it. And RNA polymerase is the enzyme that adds the new RNA nucleotides off the DNA template during transcription. So what's produced, what is made, is the RNA molecule, specifically the mRNA. For number 9, there are 3 types of RNA. mRNA is your messenger RNA. tRNA stands for transfer RNA. rRNA stands for ribosomal RNA. And DNA is not RNA, so that's already not the right answer. As for which type of RNA carries, another word for carry is transfer, an amino acid to the ribosome. You might have just read the word ribosome and thought rRNA right away, but it's not. It's asking which is carrying the amino acid. That is the tRNA. It's transferring the amino acid to the organelle, the ribosome. For number 10, I'm including a picture. It says you have to fill in the blank. Genes carry the information to make what? Well, ribosomes is the organelle that makes proteins. DNA is nucleic acid. That has the genetic code. Proteins are made up of a chain of amino acids. And it's the chemical code that cells understand. And the nucleus is where DNA is. So when we look at this picture here, you see that a gene is a small section of DNA. It's made of DNA. It's not making the DNA. DNA is the ultimate code for proteins. So again, not DNA because it's made up of DNA. Ribosomes are an organelle where proteins are made, and the nucleus is where the DNA is. So a small section of a gene that's going to open up during transcription to make the RNA, then the RNA is then going to make the proteins. The DNA is ultimately the code for proteins. For numbers 14, 15, and 16, I think you got transcription and translation mixed up because first, A is translation, B is transcription. Make sure you're reading for the details. A small little change makes a big difference. So for number 14 and 15 and 16, I brought back our little flow chart here. So which one of these occurs in the nucleus? Well, translation occurs at the ribosome. Transcription occurs in the nucleus because it's going from DNA to RNA. It involves the DNA, so it must happen in the nucleus. So it's B, transcription. 15 is asking which one occurs at the ribosome. Here in this flow chart, I see that RNA turning into proteins is translation, and that happens at the ribosome. So that is A. Which one of these creates a protein? So the protein being the end product, that is also translation. So really be careful how you read things. If you get the process of transcription and translation mixed up, you will get a lot of problems wrong. The question here that we struggled with was number 18, is involved in transcription. Remember, you need to know that transcription is DNA to RNA. So both DNA and RNA are involved in transcription. Hopefully going over these most commonly missed questions was helpful to you with your confidence and your knowledge of this material. Again, if you are still struggling, make sure you reach out to your teacher. Thank you for watching.